So my marriage blew up, okay, and rather dramatically.
But it was great for the band.
It was the genesis really for the band, and really I really thank Dan, because we had this ongoing relationship, obviously going all the way back to Temple, but more specifically at that time with the studio and having done a project together like Mazlin Wratch, where I didn't see it at the time, but he probably saw it at the time as an opportunity, like, hey, Mark, let's go out and jam. And that's what I remember when we really started to like regularly jam. And from those jams, 2 of those songs are on the EP. Sure. And that's Burn and Go.
Sure. Yeah, well, so like you've clearly have kind of a history of taking ideas and then running with it later. I remember doing this and recording ideas, and then they were just kind of, that was fun, that was cool. Mm-hmm. You might have given me a cassette of the tracks, what it sounded like, which I listened to in my car, but I was kind of like, that was cool, but it's not a song, it's an idea, it's a ditty. It's a thing. Yeah. There's a form, there's some cool parts, but that's all there is. And then Mark would start filling in some other nights and invite other people over to start building things, to add things to it. So Jim got involved, and I'll let Mark talk about that. But Mark, you brought in a cast of many other friends to come and like lend a vocal on something or do something. At some point, Mark sent out to Jim and I his written manifesto on the band called No1uno, which he and I both thought said no1uno because of the font he used. Looks like an L, about the concept of the band, the material, like a 3-page typed up thing about this manifesto of No1uno and the whole concept of the studio band and the internet age, and because this is the early internet age, obviously at this point, we're still doing AOL dial-up, right? And I was like, wow, this dude has a lot of time to think about this stuff. Like we weren't doing this to create a band. This was musical therapy and fun and jamming, But all of a sudden, there's a body of work that is now songs and now a band. That
from those jam sessions, I went on a tear. I was literally writing a song, almost, meaning, or the basis of songs. You know what I mean? Lyrics, just musical. I think 1 a week. And I remember I sent you this tape of like a dozen songs, and some of them from our jams and stuff. And it was around that time that you and I reconnected, and I sat there and I said, look, Jim, why don't you get involved in this? You know what I mean? I think this could be something really cool, and
Cineclub Part 2.
But in band form, we were like, art curators back then, you know what I mean? Now we're like in a band. And No1uno was something that was really, Jim, inspired by you for me, was because it was the advent of the internet, and you were getting your doctorate at Temple at the time, and you were like far more aware of the goings on in regard to the internet and the development of the internet. And I always had this phrase in my head way back with Bag, No1uno, because Bag was like really on the outskirts of the Philly music scene. I mean, even though we could attract our fair share of following, we were hardly mainstream. And what I always found it humorous when I would go to play places up in New York and Boston, let alone London, like nobody knew who the fuck we were. And so that term No1uno, I always said to myself, would be a great name for the band. But in addition, the education, James, that you gave me back in the mid 90s with the advent of the internet and, using pseudonyms online and the anonymity that you have, I just felt like the convergence.
Well, this was back in the days of the internet where I would talk to people and I would say, I'm doing my doctorate on the psychology of the internet, and they'd say, what's the internet?
for us, this was really the first time that we ever played exclusively in a studio band.
It changes things around.
If you think about it, Dan, for years it was always like, yeah, we did studio stuff. I mean, you know, we recorded our bands on a 4-track. We recorded our bands.
But there was always a band.
It was always a band. We were always at one point or another playing live. This was the first time where it's like, Marc doesn't have to be present for Jim and Dan to work on creating a song. Jim doesn't have to be present for Dan and I to come.
Frankly, I came to appreciate,
so it was very unique.
Prefer it. I came to prefer studio work to live, because with live band, there's the endless rehearsal of rehashing it over and over again. You're waiting for the one person to maybe catch up, or and it's like, well, with Bag, we had endless rehearsals.
And fights.
And the thing is, and because, well, also you have all those people in the room at the same time, right? And with the studio, all of those other things, the interpersonal dynamics
were of no concern.
Were of no concern, because you could always come back to it later. And also, you get to change your mind. If you're in a band and you're practicing, you're doing the licks or whatever you're doing, well, there's not a lot of changing. You change your guitar, everyone goes, hey, what are you doing over there? That's not what you played last week. So you've got this control mechanism that's happening, this interpersonal control mechanism. In the studio, you can go, hey, what if we did this? Or what if we did that? And so I came to prefer the idea of, the technology actually should be the technology should be the band, and we're the players.
Right.
We're just interceding.
Right. Yeah, and we were both at the time 30-something.
Late 20s,
early 30s,
yeah.
Married, working jobs.
Yeah.
But had this, relatively speaking, pretty advanced recording studio in a building outside of your house. I lived
Stone's
a quarter of a mile from you.
Yeah,
at
you
best,
walk there, Christ.
that we had at our disposal to create anything. So at that point now it becomes, what do you want to say and what do you want to do with that? When you have no limitation at all, then you're sort of free to go wherever you want, a blank canvas kind of thing.
and that goes back to what I said earlier, just about that was always what I envisioned, particularly after my experiences in the music industry, is like not focusing on making it, but focusing on doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being self-contained,
Little things you did, all the subtle things you said.
It's been a while since I've listened to No One You Know, but Marc sent me the
newly
mastered ones, and so I'm listening to it for the first time in a long time with headphones.
Yeah,
and I had to sit there and go, this is pretty damn well done.
Yeah.
I mean, like there isn't a boring moment anywhere within it if you're listening to all those nuances, and the composition wise and sonic, musically aside, just listening to it as an engineering project. It is beautifully engineered. It really is.
And that goes a lot of credit to Dan.
Especially given the state of the art of the technology at the time, the amount of work that was required was incredible amount of effort. So when I said earlier, you have no idea that to get that 15 seconds could take you 2 weeks.
Right.
It does, but actually that's what was done. It would say, well, we want to get this, and that's what we're going to do, and that's how long it's going to take.
So just to take you through a short exercise, so let's say there's a guitar part that's recorded on the multi-track. Marc has decided that that one part would be so much better if I harmonized it a fifth. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm already using the harmonizer for the vocal effect in real time, so I can't use that. So I know I'll move it over, I'll record it over to the digital tracks on the computer. And then I will manipulate it. Well, the render time for this stuff.
Right, and these are These are really old. These are old Macs. This
Yeah,
is like
we're
the Mac
talking
AV
Quadra
or
series
Quadras.
Macs,
Yeah,
okay?
the new bus stuff. Yeah.
So so you're gonna add this effect to it, and then say, okay, cool, I want that. Now I'm gonna render this piece, and let it do its thing. But I can't leave it on the computer because I need that for all the other things. So now I gotta bounce it back to the multi-track again, in sync back onto the place where it belonged before. So there was tons of that kind of work going on, back and forth, back and forth. Add another part, bounce it over here, mix it back to this, put it back over here, and it was kind of a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle because you only had so many slots you could use. You know,
But on that note, I really have to thank you a lot for keeping me directed.
well, that's my job. Mark.
Yeah,
I'm a pragmatist when it comes
well,
to that stuff.
and,
That's
and
good.
your years of experience as a music producer, engineer at Third Story and stuff like that, because I do recall, when I was deep in the shit, not just from a production standpoint, but also emotionally, that I would just get ideas and I would jump from one song to another song just to kind of work on the sound design. As I alluded earlier, back at West Philly with Pat and his 4-track, when I really started like experimenting with sound design, screwing with guitar sounds and vocal sounds and all that type of stuff. I was going jack shit friggin' crazy, in our studio at the time. And and I remember you saying to me, like, look, Mark, just focus on one tune at a time.
We're moving in time, in perfect rhythm, till they reach the line.
A temporal incision.
You see you're 3, time or 2 ahead of me. You need to be in line to view the dead with glee. You're free to see the crime you do surgically. For me, I bleed. Find the clues patiently.
My band, I played in a band, and that was one of the key things I always did and still do to this day. Is I'm very interested in the arrangements and the building. Whether we're doing key changes, even arranging sets of material to play live. I take this like as a very serious thing. I'm thinking about the building of energy, what parts will stand out if they come next.
It's like a play almost.
Yeah.
Where you're like,
Yeah.
there's an introduction, there's
Right.
a pause, there has to be a dramatic tension to the
Yeah.
music, and then I have a very pop sensibility of music. So I always go, where's the hook? Where's the line? Where's the thing that's going to get people to listen to this? But I wanted to mention something before it slips my mind about the technology, which is the limitations of it at the time. And my father was a painter. He was a professional painter, but he would be able to paint portraits. And I remember him telling me that at one time that what the most important element of a painting is the frame. He said because it sets the parameters, the limitations of what it is you're going to be able to do. And so with the limitations of the technology, it's, as Mark pointed out, horrible frustration, but it also, in and of itself, is also the inspiration for the creativity. The limitations of the technology are part contributor to the creative process
Absolutely.
itself.
Right, and you could argue that, like I said earlier, about the particular sonic quality of maybe it was 13-bit sampling that was actually coming out of a particular keyboard at the time. They had 16-bit, but a certain amount of that CPU energy was used for actually the operating system, right? So it sounds dated, but that's okay. And nowadays people are using boxes to make it sound 8-bit, to make it sound like it's coming out of an old
Right.
Atari video game or something, So, but yes, the particular technology of the time imparted a certain sound, and the machinery we were using to record it and its limitations limited to us to what we do, gave us options, but it also imparts what it was. So it's a document of the time, both what you were going through, what we were doing to it, how it all got done. It's so. I think it's a in retrospect, because this was a kind of reintroduction to for us even to go back and listen to it again and kind of go, wow, we were nuts, weren't we? That was insane to think that we could spend a couple years to get 4 songs done to a certain quality, and that's when left with no endpoint in mind, you could go on forever, you know. So we did.
Though I love that level of creative naivete.
Yeah.
Because now I'm so methodical. I'm like, well, why am I doing this? And I must be getting to some particular end product or end result that is going to lead to the next thing. And well, that just kills music.
Right.
It really does. It's like, if you think about why you're doing it and what the end product is going to be, you're never going to make any music.
Yeah, too
you know?
goal-oriented. You know,
Yeah,
right,
it's like you can't
Right.
be goal-oriented if you're trying to create something artistic.
Right, you
You
wanna
really
be
have to just
surprised.
kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
do this for no reason whatsoever.
Sure.
Finally, the time has come. You know what's done is done. From love to the drop of your blood, your life has the force of a flood.
And then the lyrics. Do you want to touch base a little bit?
Yeah,
I mean,
you know,
Mark's
feel like
the lyricist
there-
in all of these.
there's almost a sense of trauma in the
Oh
lyrics.
yeah, the word. Yeah,
I mean,
or,
maybe
the,
almost
or
as in-
another word.
Like there's almost this feeling like whether you're still in the trauma or you're reacting to the
Yeah.
trauma. There's very
Yeah.
much this sense of, something devastating.
Yeah.
Is occupying
Yeah,
the theme of the song.
Yeah,
Mark's divorce was the best thing that ever happened to us.
yeah.
Nobody writes good music when they're happy. That's a fact.
Yeah, no, I can tell you, like, as I indicated earlier, every time I picked up the pen or on the computer writing lyrics and stuff, everything was just about the divorce. And, and one thing I don't think I ever mentioned this to you guys, but when I look back, when I revisited this EP, this past fall, when I reached out to you, Dan, and I said, look, Dan, I want to remaster this EP and stuff for numerous reasons and stuff. And, I just kind of reflected back 20 plus years benefiting from hindsight here. And I got to tell you, man, that like the emotional toll of every time, particularly from mid-94, which was like the start of our jam sessions with no1uno, to like mid-97, 98, every recording session, mixing session, all I was fucking doing, besides being creative,
was
besides being a
rehashing
man,
in your mind.
I'm just
Right.
revisiting
Oh, yeah.
my fucking divorce. And I'm convinced that that I wouldn't have said it then, but I'll say it now, that one of the main reasons, equal to, if not more so, that I drifted from the group, I departed, was like, I had to fucking move on with my life.
In the deepest valley of her darkest painting, she burns a picture. She burns.
What is the one tune that really stands out for
Well, I mean,
you?
I think Burn does. It really does.
Yeah.
It just has all of the elements in there that are characteristic of what we do, and I think it's really well executed, and it's got a good sonic blend. So something we noticed in listening to for the mastering process, the other 2 songs on there, not Free and not
Go
and
and,
Burn,
Free, Burn, Where,
Go,
Go.
Go and Where. There's kind of a hole in the sound spectrum because of the instrumentation.
Yeah.
So there's
Not a lot of high-end stuff.
there's not a lot of stuff up here. Like in a band, you might have cymbals and things, or if you have a 12-string guitar, you've got a lot of chimey, high-frequency stuff. Those songs don't have anything up there really. There's no
Dark mixes.
There's no parts
Yeah.
that are in that spectrum to bring up to make brighter.
Yeah.
All you'd be doing is turning up the hiss. So if I were looking at that from a critical standpoint and saying I'm trying to create a radio song, where it's got to fit the spectrum of what you're listening to, and
Yeah, you definitely need to throw some high end.
you'd have to work on instrumentation to make it fit that medium. But as we've talked about quite at length here, this was not an attempt to have a radio song. This was not an attempt to have a song at all, really. This was an attempt to create art.
Yeah. Well,
Expressions of art.
Yeah. Well, in this EP about this event, and in regard to my life at the time, the divorce, and that's partly separate from these guys because they're looking at it differently, obviously, than me.
Well, right, Mark,
but
you and I did not get divorced.
Yeah,
because we weren't married.
Yeah, exactly. But when I was
That's not
in
what I
it,
heard.
when I was in it, it was really to kind of create that world, create that harrowing experience.
Visually, you had the album work, which we mentioned a little bit. Could you speak a little bit more about the front cover and the back? Was that also with Danny's collages?
Yeah, actually, Jim's
did a
brother
video as
Danny
well
did a
for
wonderful job on
Yeah.
that. A lot artwork, which I what were they, Jim? What would you call them? Collages.
I
Well, they
say
were
they're
true-
they're thematic collages.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think he did. I think he did
Yeah,
a
one for each
remarkable
song.
job. Yeah, I think that was.
Well, let's go to both. But who did the cover?
I believe it or not, which I knew little about Photoshop. It was really
vagina.
myself.
But
But
what's the writing underneath there?
well, this was me kind of like merging like several ideas
Some layers
into
there.
kind of one. It was see, Free is really about the lover, in this case myself, or the husband, really at the end of the marriage contemplating murder.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Free's about, and in this day and age, it'd probably be deemed very controversial, with all the kind of like violence, that occurs in our society today. But that's what it really was about. At no time did I ever want to go
No.
out and shoot
But-
my ex-wife or anything like
No,
that.
but you would be free after
More
the
like
murder. Is that
stabbing.
essentially
yeah, with that knife you'll be free. You know what I mean? So it was like this contemplation of murder, and then I had that alt voice going.
And the
Can't you
screaming.
see you're free? You know what I mean? Like, dude, like what are you doing? It's like this, kind of schizophrenic, but it was really that's what the tune was about. So so I got a newspaper, of they have people dying, getting killed in newspaper report, and it was just this one little segment.
I
29-year-old
saw that.
man
That I can
found
make out.
lying on the grounds,
Yeah.
and I was actually going to do an egg in the vagina, but I thought like, well, that's like Easter Day bag,
Yeah, you
and I
gotta
was
stay away from
like,
the eggs,
this
yeah.
is no1uno and stuff like
The
that.
cover
but,
actually is a vagina.
yeah, no, but
is.
what I did
But you would
was
never know
I
that.
got a pornography picture off the web, off the internet, and close up of a woman's
And this is
vagina.
early pornography, I guess.
Yeah, this is crude. This is really crude, and that's why I had to treat it so much in
95.
Photoshop because it was kind of pixelated and, stuff.
And thanks to me, he had access to the internet.
Yes, exactly.
It is
I think
high-quality
it was
porn,
Netscape browser. Where are they now, right? But anyway, so I was kind of building on these themes of like sex, love, death, and that's really. But I didn't want the front album cover to be like, oh, that's a vagina. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be more subliminal. In fact, one person actually said to me, it looks like an eye.
Yeah.
If you turn it the other way around, it looks
yes.
like an eyeball.
Yeah.
But when I tell people, no, it's actually a vagina, they go, oh, that's a vagina.
Right, but you
Yeah,
don't only know that if someone tells you that.
yeah, exactly. So in that way, I kind of think it worked. And, in the text, even though it's pixelated and kind of crude, you can still kind of see 29-year-old found lying, which lying is kind of like a play on words, lying, affairs and all that stuff, lying as in being dead and stuff like that. So, but yeah, dark fucking shit.
Go.